Hi, everybody. I'm Roy Firestone, and this is my weekly show on Facebook and YouTube. Ernie Barnes was a very close friend of mine. We lost him about 13 years ago. You likely never heard of Ernie, who played on the offensive line for the Colts, Broncos, and Chargers, but football was a means to an end for Ernie. He was an artist with a paintbrush, and with the encouragement of people like Sonny Werblin of the Jets and Barron Hilton of the Chargers, Ernie was sponsored to continue and exhibit his art in major art museums across America. His art was featured on TV shows like Good Times and on covers of record albums, Marvin Gaye's I Want You. He was also the official artist of the 1984 Olympic Games. Now, I tell you all of this because recently Ernie's work made history. At an auction for Christie's in New York, Ernie's brilliant piece called Sugar Shack sold for an astonishing $15.3 million, even outbidding the works of Cezanne and de Kooning and many other world-acclaimed artists. For those of us who knew and loved Ernie, this was tremendous news because it now puts Ernie's work among the ranks of the most sought-after artists in the world. Now, Ernie didn't live to see this, but his legacy of art and his humanity in that art will live forever. I wrote and produced this piece about Ernie and his unlikely rise from a North Carolina ghetto to become respected and admired in the status as one of America's great artists. Watch. Hi, everybody. I'm Roy Firestone. Ernie Barnes was a friend of mine, and he was a friend to mankind, too. What I mean by that is he painted what he saw, and his work was uplifting and positive and joyous and spiritual. He loved humanity. And he saw things with his eyes and his brush and his paint and his canvas that enlightened and inspired the world.
If I can contribute to people developing a positive interior life and be able to reflect and look upon other people for their gifts and strengths and potentials, then I think that my job is more than done.
Ernie left us a little less than a decade ago, and he didn't come from a traditional artist's background. He came from a place called The Bottom. That was a segregated area in Durham, North Carolina, that for so many would have been an existence that was soul-crushing. But not for Ernie. Hardship and discrimination, well, they were everywhere. And in fact, Ernie, who was a big kid, was even bullied as a youngster. But he had great influences in his life, like his father, Ernest Barnes Sr., a shipping clerk, and his mother, Fannie Mae, a domestic. They never allowed Ernie to despair. Instead, they encouraged Ernie to learn to play multiple musical instruments, to even tap dance. And when Fannie Mae introduced her young son to a prominent Durham attorney by the name of Frank Fuller, Mr. Fuller also encouraged young Ernie to read and to appreciate classical music and to paint. He introduced Ernie to great artists like Lautrec and Michelangelo and Rubens and Rembrandt. Mr. Fuller also inspired Ernie to dream. And so Ernie did dream, and he sketched and he painted his dreams and the beauty of the life of the ghetto, always with a sense of character and grace, self-respect, self-love. As a teenager, Ernie Barnes began to lift weights, to become coordinated and powerful, and to master the use of his hands. He became an outstanding high school football player. Then he was good enough for college at North Carolina Central. Finally, he went to the NFL. He was drafted by the Colts and the Redskins. By the way, when the Redskins found out that Ernie was black, they actually pulled back their draft pick. Now, Ernie did have some great years in professional football with the Broncos and the Chargers, but all the while he was still painting and sketching. His work caught the eye of the Jets owner Sonny Werblin, who told him to actually quit football and stay with the art. And he helped commission Ernie Barnes in his early years.
not been for Sonny Werblin. He made the decision almost for me that I should not play football any longer. And of course became my patron for a year, introduced me to Grand Central Art Gallery and made it possible for me to have my first one-man show at a major gallery. He hugged me and he said, "I love you like a son."
Then other team owners like Baron Hilton, Jerry Richardson were supportive of Ernie's work, and they stayed supportive for the rest of Ernie's life.
Ernie, as you can see, we're here in front of your beautiful mural you did for us. 12 years ago, this July, we unveiled this mural that the people in the Carolinas have grown to love, and we appreciate so much you doing this for us, and it was a special treat for me knowing that this painting would be in our stadium forever, and it was done by a fellow North Carolinian.
Now, some people rage against injustice. Some use it to motivate themselves. At age 18, on a college art class field trip to the newly desegregated North Carolina Museum of Art in Raleigh, Ernie Barnes inquired where he could find paintings by Negro artists. The docent replied, "Your people don't express themselves that way." 23 years later, in 1979, Barnes returned to the museum for a solo exhibition, and North Carolina Governor James Hunt attended that day. In 1990, Barnes was awarded an honorary doctorate of fine arts by North Carolina Central University. In 1999, Barnes was bestowed the University Award, the highest honor by the University of North Carolina's Board of Governors. Ernie Barnes once made a living where it was illegal to use his hands. But then through his art, he used his hands, his heart, his brain, his soul, and everything he created, his view of life, its possibilities, human dignity and joy and uplift and character, all of it came on his canvas.
I'm looking at each individual with the hope of finding there's something of the dignity in life, the humanity, the kindness, something of all of the order that will rescue us as a race of people.
We miss you, Ernie. That's our show for this week. We'll see you next week.